In this book, the events are not what happened with the people who were killed in gas chamber. It's about the prisoners who were not killed. They were starved. They only had one bread in the whole day. These prisoners lost all hope. They did not go for work. The most common thing which we all do is follow other people. He termed it as conformism.
It was a sudden and unexpected incident for me. I was shaken up. I can turn my guilt into an opportunity of doing something good or better to become a better version of myself.
We are going to present a short summary of the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. First, a few lines about the author. He was an Austrian psychiatrist. He was a professor of neurology and psychiatry at the University of Vienna Medical School. He was the father of logotherapy, one of the three psychotherapy theories, and I will elaborate it at the end. Most important of all, he was the survivor of Nazis' euthanasia or the infamous Holocaust. He went to various concentration camps. Most important was the Auschwitz concentration camp. It's the largest concentration camp created by Nazis. There, it's in this book, the events are not what happened with the people who were killed in gas chamber. It's about the prisoners who were not killed. These prisoners were forced to go in the cold winter mornings with barely anything on their body. They were starved. They only had one bread in the whole day, one loaf of bread, and only one bowl of soup in the whole day. Their shoes were torn. They had frostbite in the leg. Their condition was very pathetic. They were given beds in which 9 people used to sleep with only 2 blankets in a single bed. And they were forced to clean the toilets, and the human excreta was splashed onto their face. And they were not allowed to clean it. And if they did so, they were beaten up. This was the situation. So in this situation, what a human could do? First choice is to give up. And that is what happened with many of the prisoners. They gave up. They lost all the hope. Author termed this phenomena as give-up-itis. And these prisoners lost all hope. They did not go for work. They just lay down in the straw contaminated with human urine and burned their last cigar and were waiting for the death. The second choice was to fight every day so that one day they could escape the prison. This fight was not easy. You need some hope in order to fight out. So what was this hope? For most of the prisoners, this hope was someone waiting for them. Maybe the child, the spouse, or any other family member. Or it could be something very creative or work which is left incomplete and they would like to complete it, as it was with the author Viktor Frankl. So these things give the meaning to their sufferings. The author states that he who has a why to live for can bear with any how. So this is what is stated in logotherapy, which I mentioned in the beginning. It's a theory proposed by Viktor Frankl. Logos is a Greek word which denotes meaning. So through logotherapy, the psychiatrist tries to give meaning to the life of the patient. It gives the meaning to the sufferings or any shortcomings that's coming in their lives. Author also talks about the existential vacuum that exists in our present generations, that we don't know why we are here, what we are here for. The most common thing which we all do is follow other people. He termed it as conformism, that we try to follow other people, what they are doing, or else do what other wants them to do. That is totalitarianism. So the author talks about that how can we overcome this? We can overcome this by finding a meaning to these sufferings or anything which happens in our life. It says that we don't have to find a meaning to our lives or ask questions, what's the meaning of life? Rather, we should think that we are being questioned by life each and every hour. We have to make choices each and every hour, and it is how we make these choices which gives meaning to our lives. This is what stated in the book. Logotherapy states that we can find meaning in life. It's a theoretical thing through three ways. First is by doing something good, social work. Or second could be encountering someone or being in love with someone, caring someone. And thirdly, it could be through the attitude we show towards the sufferings that we are thrown up. Now she'll elaborate more.
Um, First of all, I find the title of this book very interesting, Man's Search for Meaning, which is come across phenomena in our generation as well as we must have found others questioning it now and then. How I personally related to the book is through a personal tragedy that I had undergone. But before that, whenever something, a tragedy which happens to us, we tend to ask ourselves, why me? Why only me? At least I ask myself, why me? But what I realized through this book is, I nowhere noticed in the book that the author is trying to complain about the hardship that he faced. And through this, I inferred that the hardships, problems, and tragedies are bound to occur, and you cannot have a control over them. But what you can control is definitely your reactions towards them, and how you can overcome them. So the tragedy that I personally previously mentioned, I would like to share and open up is in December 2022, I lost my mother due to myocardial infarction, and it was a sudden and unexpected incident for me. I was shaken up. वो बोलते हैं ना पैरों के नीचे से जमीन खिसक जाना. It was that incident for me, and subsequent months which followed after that, I was in complete hopelessness and a sense of despair, with a gush of emotions like anger, guilty, sadness, and ultimately I tend the life to be meaningless. मैंने सोचा जिस दुनिया में मेरी माँ नहीं है उस दुनिया में मेरा क्या काम, तो अल्टीमेटली ये लाइफ, ये मेरी सफरिंग मीनिंगलेस हुई. But then I got to read this book and I found one sentence which said, life potentially holds meaning under every circumstances, be it even suffering. And to go into the depth, he quote an example. He's as he mentioned already, the author was a professor of psychology and neurology at Vienna, and he has treated many patients over the years. An elderly general practitioner came over him, taking over his problem. He could not overcome the death of his wife, who had died 2 years ago, and he came up with this dilemma. So the only question which doctor asked him was, what could have happened if you had died earlier than your wife? What could have happened to your wife? He thought of it and he immediately said, no, it would have been horrible for her. I don't know how she must have or she could have survived that situation. So the doctor then enlightened him, see, your wife has been spared from that feeling of suffering, and that could be possibly because of you. You have spared your wife from that suffering, and your suffering can now be a certain as a sacrifice that you have made to your wife. So ultimately, the sufferings you are going through is a form of sacrifice, and ultimately your life is meaningful. And I was beautifully moved by this example, and I thought about the situation and related it to my life, and completely agreed with it. So from the book, you may not find completely what the personal meaning to your life is, because the author mentions that life has meaning to different persons, which cannot be same at different points. But what he gives and what he gives us the three domains where we can possibly find our meaning, which he mentioned earlier. The three. First is the vocation of the work, which you can do as the author did. Second can be love, through love, like experiencing something or encountering someone. I'll elaborate that once. And third would be unavoidable suffering. The second example that I gave, through love, which the author himself implemented in the book. Throughout the concentration camp days, he did not know about his wife, whether she is alive or dead. But still, he had conversations with his wife in his imaginations. And his constant love and selfless love towards his wife, even without knowing if she is alive or not, possibly was his motivation throughout the camp life, and which made him survive. Not only made him survive, but also motivated others to survive through that Holocaust. The next thing which I can infer is he also mentions in the last part about a tragic optimism. What is a tragic optimist is basically maintaining optimism in spite of a tragedy. Now, when a tragedy happens, it comes in three forms. The first is pain, second is a guilt, and third is death. What I inferred from these three dimensions is I can turn my pain or sufferings into an achievement or into a sacrifice which I can think of, and I can turn my guilt into an opportunity of doing something good or better to become a better version of myself. I would like to say, whether or not you have faced tragedy like me, but I feel the existential vacuum which he mentioned earlier is pretty much explained by the author in the book. And the logotherapy itself, I believe, एक समंदर भरा ज्ञान उन्होंने एक अंजलि में भर के दिया. You can look towards the size of the book. And when I can infer this many things after reading this book, I am sure I found my answers to some of my questions. So you can also definitely find out, because existential vacuum is a predominant phenomena which all of us must have observed, and which is mainly manifested in the form of boredom, where we don't get a clarity of what we are doing or what to do next. So it's just, I would like to recommend you all to read this book. If you have to start reading a book, then this book has to be one of them if you in this year. I would like to conclude by a line which impacted me the most from the book, and this goes like. So he mentions a phenomena that even after a tragedy happens to someone, there are two possibilities that a man could become of. Either he will become a saint or he will become a swine. Means जो ट्रेजेडी उसके साथ हुई, उन्होंने बाद में ऑब्जर्व किया जो प्रिजनर्स थे, सम ऑफ देम वर लाइक, अगर मेरे साथ इंजस्टिस हुआ है, मैंने इतना झेला है, तो मैं दूसरे के साथ बुरा क्यों नहीं करूँ. एंड देयर वर सम अदर्स हु फेल्ट मेरे साथ बुरा हुआ है, लेकिन मैं दूसरे के साथ बुरा नहीं होने दूंगा. So there are two dimensions or the two sides of the same coin that he noticed, and in that context he said, in the concentration camps, for example in this living laboratory and on the testing ground, we watched and witnessed some of our comrades behave like swine while others behaved like saints. So man has both potentialities within himself. Which one is actualized depends on the decisions but not on the conditions. So what you become out of it, you cannot always blame the conditions. You have two choices. What you choose is depend on your decisions basically. So thank you.